Hello everybody, my name is Paul and welcome to the PM Computing channel. Today I'm just going to do a really quick video on a simple introduction to the channel, and we're going to do a quick AI tutorial. We're going to get into lots of cool stuff on this channel going forward. I guess a little bit about me first. I am a PC gamer, have been since about 1990. I am an IT professional with over 25 years in the field. I've been playing games of all different kinds, mostly first-person shooters and simulator games. I started out with Wing Commander back in the days of the golden era of PC gaming, and I've been just going at it since then. I got into modding back around 2004 with the original Doom 3 game. Started making some levels for that, got really interested in modding. Moved on to Quake 4 when that came out, and then Crysis came out in 2007, obviously, and I started just dabbling around and making levels for that game. Sort of left everything for a while, played with Unreal Engine a little bit, and then just sort of left everything alone until Crysis 2 came out in 2011. And once that happened, I started dabbling in modding again and got really serious about it at that time. And I spent about the next till about from 2011 to 2015 making a level for Crysis 2, trying to make a mod for it. And what I found over time was that, I learned a lot of the tools, but the editor and everything that they had, all the assets in the game were very, very restricted. So because of that, I decided to go back to Crysis and started playing around with the map I had made back in 2008. And once I did that, I just kept at it, and here we go. This is the map that you're seeing right here. So let me go ahead and turn the widgets off so you can see the level, and I'll give you a quick overview. So got the highway that kind of runs around the extent of the level. I've got, if you played Crysis, you might actually remember this harbor level. I basically just plucked it out of Crysis and dropped it straight into my level. That was actually quite a challenge. And then right here you can see some custom assets I'm making. These are actually from Crysis. It's a mining nodule. I don't even remember seeing this in the game, but it had to have been there somewhere. It's got some really cool animations. It looks like a ship, so I'm using it as a ship. So you'll see these units later on in the game. Over here I have a village that winds down this hillside. And there's a lot of enemies here. I've got guys parachuting down from the sky. We've got a gas station, school, town center, and then lots of different village buildings going down the road. And over here, got some enemies set up. I've got a tank, some enemies here, some good guys over here. And once you get into this area, it scripts out a big battle between these two forces. So it's actually kind of an awesome thing to watch. And then, of course, the tank, once he notices you, will shoot you up. And then this helicopter will chase you down as well. So I've got a lot of action scripted out in this area. And then eventually you make your way over here to the airport. And there's going to be a huge battle scene over here. So I've got a lot of stuff in store, and I'll do some tutorial videos showing you how I do all these things as we go through it. But first, I'm going to go ahead and start the channel off with a quick AI tutorial. What we're going to do is put an enemy unit here in front of this building, and he's going to walk from this side over to this side and just keep walking back and forth between the different sides of the building, guarding it. And then if you walk up to him, he'll break from that action and attack you. So with that, let's get started. So the first thing I'm going to do is get my window over here. Give me 1 second. And one nice thing about this is I like how it stacks your different windows into one window, and you can just click through tabs with all the different functions. So what we want right now is flow graph. For this guy first, well, actually, let me put the guy in there. I'm getting ahead of myself here. We're going to go to Entity, we're going to go to AI, and we're going to add a grunt. Now, make sure that this icon up here, follow terrain, is selected. That way he's not above the terrain or under the terrain when you place him in the map. So we're going to grab the grunt and drag him over here. Now he's facing not the direction we want him, so I'm going to turn him a little bit, and there we go. Okay, so we need him to walk from here to here and then back to here. So how are we going to do this? Well, we need to give them a place to go to. So let's go over here to AI in your main menu, and we're going to select tag point. Now again, make sure the snap to terrain or follow terrain is selected, and we're going to drop this in. Actually, let me turn my widgets back on. And we're going to drop it, let's say right here. Now, one thing to look at, so when you drop these in, if they're not on the ground, it's not necessarily an issue, but I've found over time that sometimes it does become an issue if these aren't on the ground. So if you find it, if you put one of these in the map and it's not directly on the ground, bring it down like so, and it will work every time. So I'm going to back off again. Now, what we're going to do is create a flow graph for him. So we're going to go to flow graph over here, click create. We're going to create a new one down here, and we'll call it AI Patrol 1. So we just created a new flow graph. Now, what a flow graph is basically a visual scripting system. So you've got different nodes. If you right click, you can see all the nodes you have available to you. And each one of these nodes is basically just a logical unit that allows you to execute some function on whatever entity you're creating the flow graph on. So there's a lot of them here. At this point, what we're going to be using is AI go to speed stance. Now, in later versions of CryEngine, these options are going to be a bit different. It's called, I think there's AI go to EX is what it's called, and then there's some other stuff too. So just remember, in other versions of CryEngine, it's going to look a little bit different, but in this one, we're going to use AI go to speed stance. Now, what is speed stance? Well, the difference between go to and speed stance is that in speed stance, you can actually basically dictate how your character is going to get there. Is he going to walk? Is he going to run? Or whatever the case may be. So we have this empty AI go to speed stance logic node just sitting here doing nothing. There's no entity. You can see right here it says choose entity. If you don't know, an entity is basically just any AI or any intelligent object in the environment. So actually, I guess even a rock could be an entity. It's a geometry entity. So basically, entity is any object in the environment. So in this case, we need to assign this guy to this speed stance node in our flow graph. So what we're going to do is, with him selected, right click here and assign selected entity. Now you can see this turn blue, and it says graph entity. That means the graph entity basically means the entity that this flow graph is assigned to. So if you had a flow graph assigned to one object and you had another object in that, it'll show the object's name instead of graph entity. And this will all make sense going forward here. So we have a speed stance node, and you see here run equals 1. So the different run levels are 1, 2, and 3, and you can kind of see here that you've got 0 is very slow, 1 is normal walk, 2 is fast, run, and 3 is very fast, which is basically sprint. So what we're going to do is just keep it at default 1 for now. And stance is basically dictates what stance he's in when he's moving. So in this case, it's going to be relaxed. He's just going to be walking. If you wanted to say have him run to a point where he's crouched down running, then you could select that as well. So we'll just leave that default for now. The next thing we need is to know where he's going. So we have this tag point over here that we put in the map already. So what we need to define this is a entity position node. So we're going to go over here to entity, and we're going to create a position node. So entity pose, this position. So with this object selected, we're going to assign it to this node, and we're going to take the position output here and plug it in this position input on the speed stance node. So basically we're telling the speed stance node tells this entity to go to this position, which is assigned to this object right here. And we need to know when to trigger this event as well. So we're going to basically right now just go when the game starts. So we're going to go to miss, obviously miscellaneous, and start. Now in later versions of CryEngine, you'll find start in a different place. It's usually in game, so you would click game start, but in this older version of CryEngine, it's in MISC start. So we're going to drag the output of the start into the sync for this node, and so what this basically says is when the game starts, start this logic node here, which tells this entity to go to this position. Now we're done with the first piece of this, so we could actually test this right now. We could either jump into the game, or we can just test it out by clicking game and enable physics and AI. And what that does is just basically launch all of your events, and it does that without you having to actually play the game to see what's going on. So let's go ahead and click this, and we'll see if he actually does what we're asking him to. And you can see he's slowly walking over to the position. That glitchy behavior usually doesn't happen in the game. Sometimes you get some of that in the editor, but that usually doesn't translate over to the game itself. Okay, so that did work. So what we're going to do is go to game and click enable physics AI again. Everything resets back to normal. And we're going to drop in another tag point. AI tag point, and we're going to put it like right over here. And once again, making sure that it's down on the ground. There we go. Okay, so what we're going to do now is basically copy this and this. And we're going to Control C and Control V. And we're going to drag it right here. So the only thing that's going to change, obviously the go-to speed stance node is going to stay assigned to the same guy, but this one's going to change. So this tag point, if we left this as is, then he's going to go to this node and he's going to try to go back to this node. So we don't want that. We want him to go back to this node. So we're going to select it. It's already selected, and we're going to assign it to this position node here. Drag this out over to the position input here. And what we're going to say is, so once the game starts, the character is going to go speed stance to this position. Once it's done, we're going to start this node to go to the other position. So when we start the game, he should walk over here and then walk back to here. So let's go ahead and check it out again and see if it works. And there he goes back to the other one. And you can hear my plane coming in for a landing behind there. So I'm going to go back to edit mode, and okay, so we know that this patrol works from here to here, but basically right now he's just going to go over here and come back and stop. So what we want is for him to do a dynamic, just walk back and forth, back and forth, back and forth until you shoot at him or he's attacked or some other thing happens to break him from that action. The way we're going to do that is we're going to put a logic node in here. So we're going to back up just a little bit. I'm going to go to add node, logic, any. So what this does is you have multiple inputs, and that means that different things can trigger the same thing. That'll make sense real quick. So basically what we're going to do is drag the miscellaneous start into this node coming in and drag this out to sync. Now, if we do this, if we started this right now, it would be exactly the same as if I had this directly plugged in to here. There's no difference whatsoever. But what this gives us the ability to do is say, okay, so once he goes over here and then goes here, once he's done, let's start this over again here. Now what that does is creates an endless loop between this action and this action. So let's go ahead and test that real quick. I'll go ahead and turn the helpers off just so you can see this a little bit better. And you can see he's going back and forth the way he's supposed to be. And there you have it. So you can see he's just perpetually walking back and forth between those 2 points. If you were to, in the game, come and shoot at him, then he, of course, would basically at that point break into his default AI behavior and shoot back if he's equipped. Now, in later versions of CryEngine, you don't have to actually assign an inventory to a character in order for them to shoot back at you. They all have a default inventory, but in this version of CryEngine, if you want him to actually attack you, you have to assign an inventory. So we can go ahead and play with that real fast, and then I'll wrap up this video. So let's see, I'm going to actually spawn in the game. I'm going to cloak so he can't see me, and we'll watch him actually do his behaviors, and then just watch and see what happens. So Control G actually jumps into first person game mode. So let's watch.
Maximum armor engaged.
So he's going to keep walking. And if I shoot, you see he's moving away from me now. But he doesn't have an inventory, so he can't shoot back. So to fix that, we're going to select him. We're going to go to the flow graphs. We're going to go to add node. We're going to add an inventory node and add equipment pack. And we'll add it as soon as the game starts. We're going to assign him to this node, and then we're going to add a pack from the list, and we're going to select Asian. Let's give him Asian. Let's give him an Asian Assault. So that'll give him a FY71 machine gun, scope, and a SOCOM. I think that's a pistol. Okay. So now we'll be spawning the game.
Maximum armor engaged.
Once he sees this, he should shoot back. There he goes. So that's just a really quick tutorial. There's going to be a lot more stuff to come. I promise we're going to go over some really cool stuff going forward. So that's the end of this video. I really thank you a lot for watching the channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.